I'm surprised and shocked to read your ideas about Taj Mahal. I think that they appear to be very illogical. I have to ask you certain questions. I'm very much disturbed.
Yes,
You've gone against the established, well-known dictionaries. And what evidence is there to support that the Taj Mahal was built 500 years prior to the birth of Shah Jahan? How do you say that? How do you justify that?
There is a Sanskrit inscription by Raja Paramarthi Dev, and his time, the time when he lived, is 500 years before Shah Jahan. And that inscription says that Raja Paramarthi Dev built a Shiv Temple in Agra, and because that Shiva, one of the names of Shiva is Tejolinga, and that Tejolinga was installed, consecrated in this building called Taj Mahal.
So you mean to say that one of the names of Shiva is Teja?
Tejaji.
Tejaji.
The local people in India around Agra, they call Shiva as Tejaji.
You mean to say around Agra?
Yes, around.
So they generally they prefer to call Tejaji instead of Shiva.
Shiva.
So
Because
how can you say that? How does it become then Taj Mahal?
by wrong Muslim pronunciation. It was a mistaken pronunciation of
What is the real pronunciation then?
Tejolinga. Shivalingas are of several types.
Yeah.
And the type of Shivalinga which was installed in this particular building was Tejolinga. There are various Tejolinga, Apling, Prithviling, Vayuling, Akashling.
Yeah.
There are 5 types of lingas. Of this Tejolinga was installed, consecrated in this particular building in Agra. And therefore it was called Tejo Mahalaya. Mahalaya means a great abode of the Tejolinga of Shiva.
Mahalaya, what language are you speaking?
Sanskrit.
Sanskrit. Alaya means what?
Alaya means abode.
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 Can you give me some example about that?
The Devalaya, Himalaya, Granthalaya.
So what do you mean by Himalaya?
Himalaya means where there is this.
Him means ice, I know that.
So it is always covered with ice. Himalaya.
Means house of...
Store.
House of...
Alaya means abode of snow.
Abode of snow.
And Devalaya means abode of God. Granthalaya means abode of volumes, books.
So how does it become then a Taj Mahal?
Because it was Tejolinga was there. So it was Taj Mahal. Mahalaya. Tejo Mahalaya.
Tejo Mahalaya. So
Tejo Mahalaya is popularly because of Muslim this deterioration in the language pronunciation. Tejo Mahalaya became Taj Mahal.
that is, I just cannot understand that, but anyhow, for time being I'll again come for interviewing you, and I'll try to say I want more clarification, but I am really shocked. Tell me, what architectural evidence is there that the Taj Mahal was a Hindu temple? How do you say that? How do you justify that?
It is a 7-story building. People think that it's only 1 story, it's wrong. It's a 7-story building. And we have a tradition, Hindu tradition, is of 7 stories and octagon. Any building which is of traditional Hindu shape is always octagonal and 7-story. For instance,
Octagonal means the floor is octagonal, or what is octagonal?
building is octagonal.
Means that the floor, if we see...
No, the...
walls?
Yes, the walls of the first story. They have four... It is a... they have towers on the four sides. And they have two faces each. So four corners having two faces each makes an octagon. I got this booklet in which there are 118 serially numbered proofs about Taj Mahal having been built 500 years before Shah Jahan as a Shiva temple.
What architectural evidence is there that the Taj was a Hindu temple?
First there is the inscription, Sanskrit inscription of Raja Paramadhidev, who lived about 500 years before Shah Jahan. That inscription says that this Raja Paramadhidev's minister Sarakshan, he built a Shiva temple, and it was crystal white, and it was so beautiful that Shah Jahan, Shiva, when consecrated in that temple, he never wanted to go to Kailash. Such is the Sanskrit inscription that even it pleased, the building was so beautiful, so nice, that it pleased even Lord Shiva, who didn't want to go to Kailash. That is the Sanskrit inscription which I have quoted in my book.
Which book is that?
The Taj Mahal is Tejo Mahal Shiva temple. This is the book.
Can we go in, have you written it in detail?
Yes. It has 360 pages and 86 photos of different facets and different stories of the Taj Mahal. And it is a traditional Hindu Vedic formula. Just as even in modern English terminology, we say a person is on the seventh heaven. So seventh heaven is the highest strata, and therefore this Taj Mahal is 7-storied, and it has hundreds of rooms which have all been closed ever since Shah Jahan took it over and buried his wife in it. The archaeology department of the government of India is misleading everybody, and they are not showing all the 7 stories of the Taj Mahal to visitors, though they charge an entrance fee.
How many rooms have been actually locked or closed, in your opinion?
About 1,000 maybe. About 1,000 rooms. Because in the 7 stories, even the marble platform has 13 arches on the length side and breadth side. So if you multiply 33 by 33, there are 33 arches. 33 by 33, so 1,079 rooms, or at least that much area, is in the marble platform itself. Plus the other rooms in all the other 6 stories. The marble platform has that much space which could be divided, because there are actual arches on the length side and breadth side, and they are almost equal. So 33 into 33, 1,079 rooms even in the marble platform. And below the marble platform there are 2 stories which you can see only from the Yamuna river side, because at the back side is Yamuna. And the people who come from Agra city to Taj Mahal, they come on the marble platform, where the marble platform begins, from a red stone courtyard. So they have to remove their shoes at the red stone courtyard and then ascend the marble steps of the Taj Mahal platform. But if you go to the back side of the platform and look down, then the Yamuna is 2 stories below that. And therefore, the marble platform begins on the 3rd story. So there are 2 other stories below the marble platform which can be seen from the back side. So in all there are 7 stories. 5 stories in marble and 2 stories in red stone. And they contain maybe thousands of rooms, as I showed you. As I told you, even in the marble platform there are 1079. Actually maybe divided into rooms or maybe that much area. Because unless you open the marble platform, the 13 arches on the length and breadth side, you won't know whether they are actually rooms or they are big halls.
But why are they locked?
Because the question was that when Shah Jahan took it over and buried his wife in it, then how many servants it will require to every day wash and sweep, first sweep and then wash the 7 stories of the Taj Mahal, thousands of rooms. And that is why he barred, not only locked, he barred them with bricks. And those photos of those barred bricks I have in this book, The Taj Mahal is a Temple Palace. It has 86 photos. And some of those 86 photos show how the 5 stories or the 7 stories, how they have been barred with brick and lime. Arches, windows, they have been barred. And therefore it is very dark inside those 5 stories or 6 stories which are locked.
And Muslims all say that why there is this moon and star on the dome. Why that moon and star is there? If there should be a Hindu symbol or something like that.
Yes.
But that is an Islamic symbol.
That concept and that propaganda by Islam is totally wrong. What is on the dome? A trident, it's a trident. And with a coconut kept on a kalash and mango leaves under it. So it is a totally Hindu concept, a totally Hindu symbol, which is being misinterpreted by people saying that it is a moon. It's not a moon.
It's not a moon and there's no star there.
It has no star.
So instead of star you mean
it is a trident.
It's a trident.
Trident, which is the symbol of Lord Shiva, or which is the weapon of Lord Shiva, which he carries in his hand.
Trident is what?
Trishul.
Oh, Trishul. And that's the symbol of Shiva.
Shiva.
So
Shiva always carries a trident in his house, in his hands. That is.
What is the documentary evidence? And why did Shah Jahan requisition this building? Where was the need for that?
Shah Jahan had 2 motives in seizing the Taj Mahal and annexing it. One motive was that a big Shiva temple may be lost to the Hindus and may be converted in a tomb, Muslim tomb. For instance, one very interesting thing, when I began to lecture on these, that the Taj Mahal is not a Muslim tomb but a Hindu temple, then residents of Agra, who are Hindus, they told me a very fine tradition. They said that our ancestors used to visit 5 Shiva temples in Agra in the month of Shravan and then take their evening meal. That is, all the Hindus living near about Agra, they, in the month of Shravan, which is the rainy season about July, around July. So, it is still a Hindu custom in Agra that Hindu residents of Agra, who are Orthodox, who carry out some Orthodox, follow the Orthodox line, in the month of Shravan, the evening meal is to be taken after visiting 5 Shiva shrines. But nowadays they say, the Hindus of Agra say, we have only 4 Shiva shrines. And we didn't know which was the 5th Shiva shrine. So when Mr. Oak, you discovered that Taj Mahal is a Hindu palace, then we suddenly realized that our ancestors who used to visit 5 Shiva temples before their meal in the month of Shravan, evening meal. So this is the 5th temple which you have showed, and we are very happy. I am now going to tell you some written proofs. One is Badshanama, which is the official history of Shah Jahan, written by his court chronicler Mullah Abdul Hamid Lahori. In that he says that Shah Jahan purposely built Mumtaz in the Taj-i-Makan so that the world may admire. So Taj-i-Makan, that is the building called Taj. But Taj is the wrong pronunciation of Tejo Mahal hai. And then, why did he bury Mumtaz? First to destroy the temple, sort of the temple, to change a Hindu temple into a mausoleum, so that Orthodox Hindus may no longer be able to use it. That was one motive as a Muslim, that Shah Jahan wanted to convert a Shiva temple into a mausoleum. And the other proof is that when Shah Jahan was still on the throne and Aurangzeb was a prince, then Shah Jahan sent him an order that Aurangzeb, who was at that time, his name was not Aurangzeb, but his name, that title was conferred on him afterwards. So, when Aurangzeb was a prince, he was the governor of Punjab. But Shah Jahan transferred him to go to the south because Shivaji, the Marathas, were gaining strength in the south. So when Aurangzeb was transferred from Punjab to the Deccan, he, with his followers, etc., elephants, camels, etc., he went on foot from the Punjab to the south. And when he halted in Agra, because they were halting at night, they used to halt and march in the morning.
Right.
I was talking about two written evidences about the Taj Mahal. One is that Shah Jahan's own Bakshanama says that I took this building over from Raja Jai Singh of Jaipur, and it was then known, that building was known as Raja Mansingh's Mahal. But his grandson Jai Singh was at that time a contemporary of Shah Jahan, and he was the ruler in Jaipur. And because the Jaipur rulers were under the Mughals, therefore Shah Jahan requisitioned this building. He said that my wife has died and she is to be buried here. But actually Mumtaz had died about 1,600 miles south of Agra, in Baranpur. And she was actually buried for 6 months in Baranpur. And when Shah Jahan raised the topic, or on this ground he requisitioned the buildings in the Maharaja of Jaipur, because though it was in Agra, it was the property of the Maharaja of Jaipur. So Shah Jahan sent him a letter saying that my Begum has died, Mumtaz Begum, and I want to bury her in this particular building. His motive was to deprive the Hindus of a big shrine. That was one motive. The other motive was the immense wealth that Taj Mahal contained. For instance, all the 7 stories had silver doors and golden railings. There is a description that where the Shivlinga, for instance, I'll tell you how the Taj Mahal itself is octagonal. Its central room is octagonal. The lattice is octagonal, and inside the lattice there was a gold-studded, gem-studded golden railing around the Shiva. And in that railing compound, the priest used to sit and carry out the religious procedure to worship Shiva. Then if you look up from the place where there is this tomb of Mumtaz, then on the ceiling of that octagonal room there are uh, the eight directional points, and then there is a 16 circle of 16 snakes, because snakes are associated with Shivlinga, and therefore in the top, those photos are given in my book, that above the Shivlinga there is a pole which is hanging from the ceiling, which had a pitcher which used to drop water on the Shivlinga, as is the tradition. So that pole in the ceiling has around it 8 directional arrows, and then around those 8 directional arrows are 16 snakes, because a Shivlinga is always associated with snakes. And around those snakes are 32 lotuses, and then there are 64. So this Hindu tradition has has octagon and 8 and 16, all the multiples of 8, 8, 16, 24 and 64 and so on.
These are supposed to
These
be
are the
holy symbols.
holy symbols on the ceiling just above the Shivlinga.
And they are Hindu holy symbols.
No, they are holy Hindu, all associated with Shiva worship. I was talking about 2 written proofs from the Mughal side. One is that Shah Jahan's own official chronicle, the Badshahnama, it says that Mumtaz had died in Burhanpur, and after she was buried there for 6 months, her dead body was brought to Agra, and it was buried in a Mansingh Manzil, which was requisitioned from his grandson Jaisingh, and in that Mumtaz was buried.
It is mentioned.
It is mentioned in Shah Jahan's Badshahnama. Then the other proof that the Taj Mahal was built about 500 years before Shah Jahan is that when Aurangzeb as a prince was transferred as a governor from Punjab to the south, he travelled, because in those times they had to travel on foot and in palanquins accompanied by elephants and
Horses.
camels, horses. So when during the journey from Panipat to Aurangabad in the Deccan, when Prince Aurangzeb, he camped in Agra, he was shocked, because when he went to the Taj Mahal premises, he doesn't say Taj Mahal. He has written a letter to his father Shah Jahan saying that Your Majesty or Your Honor, when I was going from Punjab to the south and I encamped in Agra, I visited that holy tomb and I was shocked that most of the buildings were leaking or cracking, and therefore I request, because it was 500 years before Shah Jahan that area was built, Taj Mahal was built, Tejo Mahal, as a Tejo Mahal is Shiv Temple. So within those 500 years, it had undergone a lot of deterioration. And because it was all Muslim rule and the temple was a Hindu temple, and they couldn't repair or keep in up-to-date form that entire area. And therefore he says, Huzur, I was shocked to see that most of the buildings around the tomb are in a bad shape. Somewhere there are cracks, somewhere there are leaks, and therefore I request Your Honor, that is his father Shah Jahan, to have them properly repaired. So these 2 written evidences One in Badshah Shahjahan's own chronicle, saying that it was a Hindu temple, and we took it over from the Maharaj of Jaipur. And the second Aurangzeb later. Now this Sanskrit inscription which I have said is called Vateshwar inscription, because the British scholars of and the British rulers of those times found it somewhere on the road. This inscription was actually in the garden of the Taj Mahal, in the center of the garden, because it says, in Sanskrit it says, Idam Mandiram, this temple. So when that inscription says this temple, it means that the inscription written by Raja Paramati Dev's minister selection, and that inscription which is called Vateshwar inscription, because the British had given it a wrong name, because they were under the impression that Taj Mahal was built by Shah Jahan. So this inscription, which refers to a beautiful Shivlingam, must be concerning that Vateshwar, which is about 18 miles from Agra. But Vateshwar has a number of, and while this inscription refers to the Taj Mahal as a wonderful building in which Shiva, when consecrated, he never wanted to go to the Kailas, which is a rocky hill, his abode. So these two written inscriptions I have quoted in my book. One is the Persian, there are two Persian, one is the extract from the Badshah, and the second is that Aurangzeb letter which he wrote to Shah Jahan.
Where did you get this Aurangzeb's letter?
Aurangzeb's?
Letter, how could you get that?
That is in the National Archives, all these Persian chronicles and letters. They are in the National Archives in Delhi. And also they might be in the Khudabakhsh library in Patna, and perhaps in Osmania University, in Aligarh University, etc. तो आर्कियोलॉजी में हिंदू बहुत हैं, बोले साहब आप चुपचाप आइए, हम आपको ऐसी चीजें बताएंगे जो किसी को नहीं बताते.
Okay.
तो उनको बड़ी, they were very happy when I wrote that book. First I started this.
तो उन्होंने बताया कि अंदर क्या है?
हाँ, उन्होंने क्या कहा, वो ऐसा है, 7 स्टोरी की चाबियां उनके नीचे जो ऑफिस है, जहाँ हम टिकट निकालते हैं अंदर जाने के लिए, वहाँ एक ऑफिस है उनका, और एक सुपरिटेंडेंट होता है, ताजमहल का सुपरिटेंडेंट. ही सिट्स इन दिस ऑफिस एंड ही हैज क्लर्क्स, और उसके बाद चपरासी होते हैं, और वो सारी चाबियां इतने कमरों की वहाँ लटकी हुई होती है, जैसे यहाँ लटकी है.
अच्छा, कमरों की चाबियां लटक रही?
हाँ, लटकी होती है,
पर वो
उनके ऑफिस में, और वो किसी को खोलने नहीं देते. मगर मैंने जब ये ताजमहल का शोध किया, तो वहाँ के लोग इतने इम्प्रेस, साहब आप चुपचाप आइए, आप जो देखना चाहिए हम बता देंगे. तो मैं जब वहाँ, मैं 3-4 बार गया, एंड बिकॉज दे वर वेरी फेवरेबल टू दिस डिस्कवरी, तो उन्होंने, अरे भाई ओक साहब आए हैं, उनको चाबी लेके, एक चपरासी को चाबी लेके, ओक साहब जो देखना चाहते हैं बता दो. तो मैं फोटोग्राफर को भी लेके साथ गया था, एंड देन आई टुक दोस फोटोग्राफ्स. तो हम जब ईंटें निकालने लगे तो अष्टवसु की मूर्ति बाहर आने लगी.
अष्टवसु?
हाँ. तो वो घबरा गया. ताजमहल तो शाहजहां ने बनाया कहते और ये अष्टवसु की मूर्ति आ गई. तो ही आस्क्ड द डायरेक्टर जनरल, क्योंकि ऐसा है, ये आर्कियोलॉजी के साथ उन्होंने डिवाइडेड इंडिया इनटू 7 पार्ट्स, और बाय फॉल्स.
हाँ, ये बस.
Okay, uncle, you say the same thing after 1, 2, 3 in English, ठीक है? अब क्वेश्चन पूछिए.
My basic research conclusion is that every so-called mosque and tomb, not only in India, throughout the world, which is a spectacular historic monument, is a captured Hindu building. So even in Jerusalem, Dome on the Rock and Al-Aqsa are Hindu temples, which are being misused as mosques. So similarly, Taj Mahal was the Shiv Temple which is being missed, which was requisitioned by Shah Jahan from the Maharaja of Jaipur who owned that building and converted into a tomb. He removed the Shivlinga, threw it out, and there constructed his wife's tomb, and he closed and barred all the rooms, the thousands of rooms which are in that 7-story building.
Taj Mahal faces south.
The Yamuna runs at the back. And on both sides of the, because Taj Mahal is white, but on both sides there are buildings which are 7-story, both are 7-story. The left hand side is the west, when you approach the Taj Mahal. The left hand side 7-story building, and which is of saffron color, which is a Hindu color. So on both sides of the Taj Mahal are 7-story buildings. And now Muslim mosques should not be 7-story. What is the point? Because if somebody is reciting namaz, offering namaz on the ground floor, and if somebody is walking, that's insulting. That's against. So, but how the Muslims, because they are misusing the 7-story building, saffron colored 7-story building on the west as a mosque. Therefore, they are asked that what is that other 7-story building on the east? So that is a jawab, that is a similar building. But that is foolish. Because if the 7-story building on the east is not a mosque, then the 7-story building on the west is also not a mosque. So these buildings were used as dharmashalas when Taj Mahal was a Shiva temple. Then Katha, Kirtan, Pravachan और पंगत में लोग बैठते थे for meals etc. So those 7-story buildings on the other side, they are an additional proof that the Taj Mahal is not at all a mosque. That is, when you buy a ticket at the entrance gate of Taj Mahal and go inside, there is a long garden, and in the center of the garden is a marble because it was a Congress government, a pro-Muslim government, therefore they didn't like my research and they sent 2 CIDs to my house. Then they heard that it was just before I wrote the book Taj Mahal, but I had told many people that I am going to write a book on Taj Mahal. So the CID in Delhi came to my house and they said, well, look here, Mr. Oak, we are thinking, we are told that you are going to write a book on Taj Mahal. I said, yes. So they said, the government can arrest you and so on. So I said, doesn't matter, when I publish the book, then you can see. So actually when I published the book, the CID, they closely examined every line and every word that I had said. And they were so impressed that the next day they came doing namaskars to me. That Mr. Oak, we are very surprised and shocked that without inciting any communal feelings, you have given these 118 proofs. And that's why the CID was very happy. So that is why under there is a government law that they give the sanction or the license to printing presses on the condition that every book that you publish, you must send 2 copies to the CID for examination. So when the CID themselves told me this rule, when they heard that I am going to write a book on Taj Mahal, they said, Mr. Oak, you will have to submit 2 copies to the CID within 2 months of publication. So some of the printing, that is the responsibility of the printing press, not of the author. So they said, of course the responsibility is on the printing press which publishes your book. So I said, all right, then he will send it. So the CID were on the watch. Mr. Oak is going to write a book on Taj Mahal and perhaps he will incite communal feelings. So they were keeping a watch. And because for a printing press, it is very routine because he prints invitations, marriage invitations and visiting cards and so on. So he didn't, within 2 months he didn't send the book. So the CID sent him a notice. Show cause why you may not be prosecuted because this book on Taj Mahal, which we have heard and seen, you are not sent 2 copies. So that owner of the printing press came very agitated, he came very afraid and agitated. He said, अरे ओक साहब ये तो गजब हो गया, मुझे सरकार से नोटिस आई है कि तुमने 2 महीने के अंदर क्यों नहीं भेजा? तो मैंने कहा देखो भाई मत घबराओ, don't be afraid, I am a lawyer and nothing will happen to you because the book is not, it doesn't inciting communal feeling, it gives the proofs. So the CID very minutely examined every word that I had written and they were so happy. Though after reading the book, they came to me with doing, folding their hands in a namaskar style and they said, Mr. Oak, we are highly impressed that we have not at all said even a word against the Muslims. We have simply pointed out the historical proofs and we are very happy. I want to convey a very important message to all these literary persons or professors and professors of history and universities that the entire Muslim history throughout the world is totally false. Because Arabia is a Sanskrit word, Muhammad is a Sanskrit word, Ahmad is a Sanskrit word. And one very important thing which the world should know, that every Muslim country has a rule that, now for instance Syria, Arabia, all Iran, Iraq, they have a rule not to say even a word as to what was the civilization before that country was converted to Islam. So this is such a important thing that the UNESCO, United Nations Education, Scientific and Cultural Organization, it ought to compel all Muslim countries to discover and teach, because that history is already there, but they have suppressed it. For instance, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Arabia, etc. Nobody is allowed to say even a word as to when this country was converted to Islam, because after all, Muhammad declared Islam in 622 AD. So before 622 there was no country which was Islamic. And in 622 when Muhammad declared, it was only Arabia which was Islamic. But Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkestan, they were converted later. But those countries and all the intellectuals are totally barred from saying even a word as to what was their culture before they were converted to Islam. That is one thing. And what cruel methods were used to compel them to become Muslim, those countries. So this is a very serious matter. That the whole world is being cheated and the Muslim world is being cheated. They are not being told what was their civilization before conversion. And this is by under the threat of torture. So recently in Iran, somebody raised a question about their pre-Muslim and he was immediately silenced. He was stoned to death or something. So this is a very serious matter. And representatives of all countries who are on UNESCO, they ought to raise this question that all Muslim countries must be compelled to teach all history, pre-Muslim history, post-Muslim history, and how those nations were converted to Islam. See to Bombay. One Arab man was sitting there. I didn't know that he was Arab. मगर वो बेचारा अरब होने की वजह से उसने मेरे से कॉन्वर्सेशन शुरू किया कि भाई आप कौन हैं, क्योंकि हम टैक्सी में बैठे थे और 2-3 घंटे हमको बात करनी थी. तो अब वो नया था यहाँ, उसको कोई पहचान का नहीं था. तो वो मेरे से बातचीत उसने शुरू की, भाई आप कौन हैं, कहाँ रहते हैं. तो वो मेरा दोस्त बन गया है ना. तो वो एक दिन मेरे यहाँ आया. तो मैंने हम एक एनुअल जर्नल निकालते हैं फॉर रीराइटिंग वर्ल्ड हिस्ट्री. तो मैंने उसको बताया कि, और मैंने उसको कहा कि देखो भाई तुम अरब जब मुसलमान हो, जब मगर उसके पहले का इतिहास आपको नहीं पढ़ा था. तो वो बोला मिस्टर राइट, बट प्लीज डोंट सेंड योर मैगजीन टू आवर कंट्री. वो वहाँ कस्टम्स के पास आते ही बलवा हो गए. इतना टेरर है मुस्लिम कंट्री.
क्या डोंट सेंड योर बुक्स?
annual journal हमने कहा था,
And
annual journal
अच्छा annual journal
of the Institute for Rewriting World History. ये जो I want all scholars throughout the world to establish a World Vedic Heritage Academy to tell the Christian countries that Christianity was founded in 2002, that is 2002 years ago. So before 2002 years ago, there was no Christianity. And because Islam was founded in 622 AD, therefore before 622 there was no Islam. Then what was that? So Hinduism, Hinduism is a modern name only confined to India, but Vedic culture and Sanskrit language has been the human heritage for multi-billion years, because our calendar, the Vedic calendar, extends to 7 manus, and 7 manus amount to multi-billion years. So it is only Vedic culture and Sanskrit language which have a history of the entire humanity from the very first generation up to today. While Christianity has a history of only 2002 years, Islam has a history of only hardly 1400 years. That is why all Christian countries have a Sanskrit name. And all persons like George is a Garga, we had a Garga Rishi. So that George is a wrong pronunciation because G is pronounced both as Go, as God gave to Ganesh, Gopal, and J in generator and gerontology. So because of that shortage of the alphabet, the Europeans have to know that before 2000 years, they were all Vedic countries speaking Sanskrit language. Similarly, Muslim countries have to know that before 622 AD, their forefathers all followed Vedic culture, and the names of all even Muslim countries are Sanskrit. Because Syria has Sura Asura, and Iranam means a salty or barren ground is Iranam. So every Muslim country and their scholars and their universities ought to teach the pre-Muslim Sanskrit Vedic history of those countries.
Iranam is now what?
Has another significance, namely that in Shiva emblems, that is Shivalingas, there is always a pitcher of water with a hole at the bottom in which water drips over the Shivalinga all day long. So because Taj Mahal was actually Shiva Temple for centuries before Shah Jahan, therefore there used to be a pitcher hung on a pole from the dome, and that pole is still there. So from the time that the Taj Mahal was misused as a tomb, that pitcher from which the water used to drip had been removed, but the pole still hangs there. So that is proof that there used to be a Shiva emblem, that is Shivalinga, in the center of the octagonal enclosure, in the central chamber of the Taj Mahal, on which the pole hanging in the center, a pitcher used to hang and water used to drip on the Shivalinga. किती शाहजहानचं किती वर्ष 30 years. In the 30-year reign of Shah Jahan, he had to fight 48 battles. So how can a person, the usual public belief is that Shah Jahan's reign was a period of peace and so on, but that's absolutely wrong, because actually there were over 40 battles that he had to fight, and therefore Shah Jahan's period was a troublesome period in which he could not find the peace to build a शहाजहानचं किती वर्ष 30 years of his 27 to 30. Shah Jahan ruled for over 30 years, and people misbelieve that his reign was a period of peace. It was not a period of peace because he had to fight over 30 battles, and therefore he could never have the peace or the money or the inclination to build a building like the Taj Mahal.
It's a funny thing to know that the buildings like Taj Mahal could have been constructed by Shah Jahan. When in his own Basharnama he admits that I have not built it, I have taken over this building. And it is further funny when Mumtaz's son Aurangzeb says that he has repaired that monument in 1652. The letter of Aurangzeb has already been translated by the Archaeological Department of India, stating that in 1652 Taj Mahal was old and needed repairs. I still do not understand how people believe that the Taj Mahal was built between 1631 to 53. Can a building be fit for repair 1 year prior to its construction or completion of its construction? So definitely, unfortunately, the country of ours is the only country on face of earth which teaches the history written by the aggressors, or in a strong words one can say written by the enemies of this country. There is no country on face of earth. For example, the history of England written by Germans cannot be taught in the colleges of England, or vice versa. There is no justification that the history of India written by Mughals or by Britishers based on Mughal chronicles should be taken as authentic history of this country. So definitely everything has been wrong with the Indian history, and these monuments, once one goes to see them, if he has this curious doubt in it that the truth must come out and he must see the reality of the things, well, he is able to see everything of it. Nothing. Right at the main door, you have a Toran of Ganesh while entering in Taj Mahal. Why there should be Ganesh in a graveyard or so, I still doubt about it. It's not at all required. And has a perambulation passage, places made, about 5 perambulations could be made to the center point of the Taj Mahal even today. One can do the first perambulation inside the lattice, the second one outside the lattice, the third one can do it in the rooms around, the fourth on the marble platform, and the fifth where we remove our shoes. And it's a funny thing, sixth one can't do it because both sides comes the building and the back side is a river. So it is very much doubtful that, because the person, when we are claiming that the Shah Jahan built it, and when Shah Jahan himself says I have not built it, I still doubt about it. What has gone wrong with our historians and other people? They are not able to understand it. They are not able to even know the facts and even do the search of it. If the height of Taj Mahal is more than 5 feet than Qutub Minar, if Qutub Minar has 5 stories, how the Taj Mahal will have only 2 stories? One is the real artificial grave, another is the real grave. I still doubt about it. And why government of India and other people are afraid to see the facts and see the truth about it? Perhaps the reason best known to them. I don't know why they don't want to search the truth. It's a funny thing, and one must open their eyes and see the things through and come to the true value of what has gone wrong with our complete history. Our history is just upside down. Those who were the destroyers are termed as builders. Doubt. The full realm of Mughal, if we see it, right from Babur onward to Aurangzeb, everybody has fought against his brother, father and everything, and then came to a throne, and they had no time whatsoever to take this gigantic work of building the buildings. Can one say one will be interested to establish his kingdom, and he doesn't have time. That one cannot say that he threw away the sword and started taking construction material for building after building. Not at all, not at all. The total history is upside down. One has to open their eyes to see the monuments. As you already know that Taj Mahal has Gaushala in it. Taj Mahal has Nagar Khanas in it. One drop dripping stories around it, which is absurd, because Taj Mahal is a 7-story structure. There is a hall inside a dome, and there is about 58 feet diameter hall inside the dome, with the wall thickness of the dome is about 13 feet. It's not an ordinary thing. There are, even when the repairs took place in 1946 or so, they found some arches in it. They have been blocked up. But no one could feel to find the truth in it. It is, there are much decorations in the Taj Mahal of Om, conch shells, water pitchers. Then the lattice around the Taj Mahal, the top border, if one can see, one gets astonished to see there is Abhishek taking place on a Shiva Linga. We have 12 Jyotirlingas in our country, and every direction, because there are 8 directions, Purva, Paschim, Dakshin, Uttar, Agneya, Nairitya, Vayavya, Ishanya, and one is Urdhva and other, like Dasha Disha, what they call it, 10 directions. In all those 8 directions, every direction has a 12 Abhishek design on the top border of the lattice. That water dripping from a pitcher on a Shivalinga, and the cobras have dropped, a pair of cobras have dropped their hood in the reverence because the water is falling. There are another 12 pitchers kept on the top of the lattice to make the number of the pitchers to 108. It is funny, 108 pitchers around. Then Abhishek on 12 Jyotirlingas in every direction. If one looks up in the main dome, he is able to see a midday blazing sun on the top of that, and having all around tridents. Lot of things can be seen if one just open their eyes. The top of the pinnacle, if one opens his eyes, he can see the funny thing. I doubt very much what has gone wrong to the archaeologists, what has gone wrong to the historian, what has gone wrong with our politicians, what has gone wrong with our educated people. I don't know why they are lying down and taking everything for granted. They even don't understand the enemy of the country can never write their proper history. Our history records had been burned to ashes, the historical facts known to everyone. And yet we are so much absurd. They say, no, it is not possible. I do not understand it, what has gone wrong. Is it all right? यांना आकला नाही आहेत का? म्हणजे कळतच नाहीये. म्हणजे हिस्टोरियन ऐतिहासिक लोक असल्यावर सुद्धा हा बोलायला तयार नाहीये. म्हणजे आर दे नॉट ट्रू टू देअर ओन सब्जेक्ट? कळत नाही. सांगा काय काय कसं काय झालं काय याला? काय इतका मेला का हा समाज? म्हणजे हॉरिबल कंडिशन झालेली आहे. हा देश कुठे चाललेला आहे? काय परिस्थिती आहे? म्हणजे आमचा स्व गेलेला आहे. वी डोंट हॅव स्व ज्याला आहे की आमचं, म्हणजे ज्या म्हणतो पूर्वी आम्हाला लहानपणी शिकवलं जायचं की जिथे लाथ मारेन तिथे पाणी काढेन, ते गेलं. आता मरगळलेला समाज जो दिसतोय आपल्याला समोर, हा खोटा इतिहास शिकल्याने झालेला आहे. म्हणजे अगदी धडधडीत. बाय लर्निंग रॉंग हिस्ट्री वन विल नॉट गेट हिज enthusiasm. He will not feel that he is an enthusiastic. His ancient people could do something. He always feels they were all stupids, they were nothing. If everything has been brought from by the West, somebody came from outside and it taught us, and we did not know anything. We are just worth nothing. We are supposed to be only slaves. म्हणजे मला असं वाटतं looks like that. You can correct me if you find me, I'm telling something absurd, you can correct me, you're most welcome to do that. That the history of India written by this dirty land before the invasion by the Alexander the Great, then came Hun, Shaks, Kushak. The best thing what Indian, because then came Abyssinians, Turks, Pathans, Khiljis, Lodis, Mughals. They were very brave, very noble. Those who resisted were down like a deck of cards. Everybody is happy in the English rule. They brought peace and prosperity to this stubble land. They gave a rule of law the people in this country never knew before. The best thing what Indian can do to be the most obedient servant of a foreign persons. That's all. We are worth only to become slaves. That's unfortunate. History has been taught in our schools and colleges. How we will feel that yes, we can do something. We have a power. We have this thing. And once we say we are Indians or we are Bharatvasis or we are belonging to Vedic Sanskriti, who taught once the world, when the world was roaming around naked, the Vedas were written here. And if this thing is not taught to the students and not told to the students at least, I do not know the future of this country.